DNA evidence from an almost 20-year-old rape case was found here in the office of a former employee. This season, the Astros have been selling out Minute Maid Park. And it's the people who've been sitting in these seats that have made an impact on the guys' performance each and every night out here. And conditions from Tropical Storm Cindy are starting to worsen. You can see the choppy surf, the debris on the ground, and the heavy rain. And while there is a voluntary evacuation in place, residents say they're gonna stay put. James Harden and Chris Paul easily make one of the best duos in the league. A duo strong enough to beat Golden State. Amanda Downs was driving down Highway 225, aiming a gun at innocent drivers, trying to get through traffic faster. To some, the idea of getting into a chamber that gets less than 230 degrees may seem a little crazy. This happened in Bell Park in Montrose. Good afternoon, I'm Kacey Bowen. Police aren't sure why this particular statue was targeted. Rockets fans were surprised to hear today that longtime owner Leslie Alexander is selling the franchise after 24 years. But don't go selling your merchandise just yet. Alexander said he's committed to finding a buyer who will keep the team right here in Houston. Imagine walking down the sidewalk and being stopped by a tall metal pole. That's happening to the residents along Kempwood.
They're kind of a nuisance. They're in the way.
This is happening because Texas legislator passed Senate Bill 1004, which allows network nodes to be placed in pedestrian right-of-ways.
Walking down the street, you either have to walk in the mud or you have to walk on the edge of the street to get to where you're going.
These poles are similar to giant utility poles, which now sit right in the middle of the sidewalk.
I couldn't believe what I saw when I saw this in the middle of the sidewalk.
Houston City Council member Brenda Stardig said this whole plan needs restructuring.
This needs to be rethought. It needs some further restrictions or guidelines put in place.
She's urging for some restrictions, saying public safety is more important.
They're using their sidewalks for strollers, for walking, for exercise, to get to and from, to the bus stop, whatever it is they need to do.
But these poles aren't just affecting one street.
We anticipate 1,500 in the city of Houston.
That means sidewalks all throughout Houston have the possibility to be home to these new poles.
Being able to walk on the sidewalk is much safer than having to walk on the street.
Which is something that is now being threatened. Kacey Bowen at KHOU 11 News. We got here about 1 this afternoon, and conditions from Tropical Storm Cindy are starting to worsen. You can see the choppy surf, the debris on the ground, and the heavy rain. And while there is a voluntary evacuation in place, residents say they're gonna stay put. Crashing waves, rough winds, and choppy surf. That's just some of what Tropical Storm Cindy blew onto Bolivar Wednesday afternoon.
It looks scary. It's so dark and windy.
But many Bolivar residents are choosing to stay put, even with a voluntary evacuation in place.
I'd evacuate if a big storm was coming.
Even though Seth Sewell says this is some of the worst flooding he's seen.
Almost the worst I've seen it in the 2.5 years I've been down here.
Over on High Island, water has made its way onto Highway 87. TxDOT is warning drivers to be careful.
It's a lot of water. It looks like it's already starting to flood.
Tourists who came to Bolivar said now they'll have to look to spend their time elsewhere.
Probably Galveston or Houston for a few days.
The Galveston Ferry is continuing to run until conditions are no longer safe. On Bolivar, Kacey Bowen, KHOU 11 News.
I am the driver of the Nigerian women's bobsled team.
Pause, rewind, clean out your ears. Do whatever you need to, but yes, you heard that correctly.
Every day I wake up and I'm like, Lord, help me. Lord, Sean, what are you doing right now?
Shawn Adigan is the first woman from Nigeria and the entire African continent to take on bobsledding.
At first, I knew I had completely lost my mind when I decided to do this. I was convinced that I was outside of my mind.
But she's quickly learned that this is the history that she was supposed to make.
I realized that this was my reality, this was my calling, this was something that I was meant to do and to bring to everyone else.
Shawn knew what kind of work she was in for. Qualifying for the 2012 Olympics, Shawn is a 3-time Nigerian champion.
It was one of those things that you can't really explain to people because it feels so surreal.
But this work doesn't compare.
I mean, sometimes it's easy to put things objectively, like on a scale of, 0 to 10. So I would say this is probably 100.
Even with the hard work, Shawn says it's worth the legacy that she's leaving.
for me, it's never been about me, and it never will be. You know, it's always been about what it is I can bring to society, what it is I can bring to whatever I represent.
And right now, Sean is only 3 races away from qualifying to represent Nigeria in the 2018 Olympic Games in South Korea.
No representation of an entire continent in this sport, you know, that if there's anything I can do to help that or change that, then that's something I want to be able to give back. I want to be able to provide that.
Sean's next races are in November. Kacey Bowen, KHOU 11 Sports.